The next item of business is a statement by Natalie Dawn-Innes on capacity and future of Secure. The Minister will take questions at the end of her statement. Therefore, there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on Natalie Dawn-Innes. Minister, up to 10 minutes, please.
Presiding Officer, over the past year, I have updated Parliament several times on recent challenges in the provision of secure care in Scotland and on the actions this Government has taken to address these. I also committed to inform Parliament of work being undertaken to build on the strengths, address weaknesses and to deliver a sustainable, future-proofed system aligned with the promise. In June, I published the Government's response to the Reimagining Secure Care report, which focuses on actions necessary to achieve this. And I want to ensure that Scotland's secure care system treats children as children, with their rights and well-being at the heart of all decisions made with, for and about them. That system, by necessity, must provide an intensive, trauma-informed environment for the very small number of children whose needs in relation to safety, support and stability are acute. But it must also aim to reduce the need for secure care through earlier, more effective intervention. Our immediate priority, of course, is to stabilise and to strengthen secure accommodation capacity. As of today, there are 11 secure care places available. This relatively positive position is one we have seen for the past 4 months. It comes as a result of close monitoring and collaboration to restore capacity and to build resilience in the system. Recent actions delivered include a commitment of up to £8.4 million in funding to cover the placement of sentenced and remanded children, and up to 16 beds across the secure estate to maintain capacity in 25-26 and 26-27. A commitment of up to £2 million in funding to support contingency actions in 25-26, updated practice guidance on alternatives to secure care published in March 25, and a new 4-bed national contingency resource which opened in April at Rossy. Presiding Officer, significant work is underway to strengthen the provision of secure care and access to it. Our goal remains to uphold an effective and equitable system for children who might require secure care, recognising that placement decisions rest with independent courts, children's hearings, chief social work officers and secure accommodation providers. Progress at St Mary's Kenmure is a key part of our recovery efforts, with staffing increases enabling a safe and sustainable extension of capacity. Government officials continue to provide support to help restore capacity and to meet Care Inspectorate requirements to enhance the quality of the service. We expect St Mary's to return to offering 14 places by the end of this month and 16 by the end of 2025. The Good Shepherd Centres Board decided in July to temporarily restrict capacity from 18 to 12 beds to allow the centre to undertake physical remediation work and recruit to key roles. This temporary restriction has not adversely affected overall capacity across the secure estate, and Good Shepherd continue to accept referrals. When I visited the Good Shepherd Centre last week, I was advised that the board is meeting next week to consider restoration plans, and I was encouraged to hear that they continue to make progress in promise-keeping practice development, particularly in areas around reducing restraint, advancing violence reduction and restorative approaches. Government officials have been actively engaging with St Mary's and with Good Shepherd to offer support to ensure restoration of full capacity as soon as safely possible. I am also determined to deliver greater resilience and longer-term sustainability in the sector. I can therefore announce today, Presiding Officer, that, subject to the necessary approval and registration, a further new 4-bedded national contingency resource at Rossy should be operational in early December. These additional spaces provide the further contingency that our system may require in the longer term, not least to provide safe and appropriate care options for young people who will no longer be placed in young offender institutions, but whose offences still necessitate a deprivation of liberty. However, the Promise Scotland has rightly highlighted the need to strike a careful balance, ensuring sufficient capacity to meet current demand without over-provision that could signal over-reliance on deprivation of liberty and undermine longer-term sustainability. Planning in a systemic way for change is important. I can therefore advise Parliament that we are working with COSLA to develop a joint action plan, bringing together local and national government to coordinate efforts, clarify responsibilities and to drive progress in a coherent and collaborative way. As previously announced in January, we have agreed to fund a dedicated professional lead within Social Work Scotland for a 12-month period to strengthen support for placing authorities, and I am pleased to say that the successful post holder started work at the end of August. The aim is to enhance confidence and awareness among key professionals working in this challenging environment, and by working closely with government officials, placing authorities and providers to support effective decision-making and practice. As members themselves will be aware, the needs of children and young people are changing, often becoming much more complex. As acknowledged in our response to reimagining secure care, in the future we need our provision to evolve to meet emerging and developing needs. Last month I had the opportunity to visit Kibble and learn more about the support they offer to children. For over 160 years, Kibble has provided support and services to children and young people in Scotland, including providing secure care for young people up to the age of 18. Kibble already provides care in 3 small group houses, accommodating up to 6 young people each. And these care houses provide a safe and nurturing environment with a consistent staff team providing round-the-clock care and support. Presiding Officer, I can announce today that the Scottish Government is working with Kibble to construct up to 3 future-proofed 4-bedded houses designed to create a trauma-informed environment and provide adaptable environments that respond to the evolving and complex needs of the children they care for. Not only will these additional houses add useful capacity to the secure care system and estate, they also help to signal our intent, shared with secure care providers and partner agencies, to develop what and how we provide in the future. As we start to actually reimagine secure care for the future, it's important to gather views, knowledge and experience to inform the development of options. And as part of the Government's reimagining response, I committed to consult on those options before the end of Parliament. This includes considering the future purpose of secure care, the routes into and transitions from secure care, as well as more practical aspects of how secure care is provided in the future. This includes commissioning and contract management and how best to coordinate a national response to the acute needs and interests of a very small number of children and young people from across the country, with a wide range of backgrounds and circumstances. Presiding Officer, placing children and young people with complex and acute needs in secure and accommodation, sometimes far from family, often out with their local community and sometimes for considerable periods of time, is one of the most serious things that we as a society do. And, Presiding Officer, placing these children in secure care, sometimes far from family, often out with their local community, as I say, is one of the most serious things that we do, and we should not take that lightly. We should always be cognisant of our responsibilities here, not just to the children involved, but also to the children's panel members, the judiciary and the chief social work officers who have to make these decisions, and the professionals, of course, who support that decision-making, as well as the people providing care. A caring, professional, supported and supportive workforce is, of course, vital. The children and young people who are placed into secure care, either in short or longer-term situations, deserve nothing less. I want everyone working in and around these most difficult and complex circumstances to know that they are valued and appreciated, and that we are committed to enhancing their capacity and confidence. I know that members in this chamber will want to echo this, and I welcome the close attention that many have paid to this most important issue in my portfolio in recent months. This statement seeks to reassure members that over the summer our focus has very much been on addressing the immediate capacity issues. The interventions and the work that I have set out means we are achieving that. I am assured that the steps we have taken and are taking will minimise the risk of the challenges experienced earlier this year from arising again. We're pressing forward with further positive capacity investment and interventions. We continue to work in close partnership with secure care providers themselves, placing authorities and third sector organisations. And we're drawing on their expertise and commitment to ensure that every child receives the care and protection that they need in safe, trauma-informed environments. In short, we are laying the foundations for a more sustainable and resilient system for the future. Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Minister. The Minister will now take questions on the issues raised in her statement. I intend to allow around 20 minutes, after which we'll need to move on to the next item of business. I encourage members who have not yet pressed their buttons but wish to ask a question to do so, and I call first Miles Briggs.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer, and can I thank the Minister for advance sight of her statement. Scottish Conservatives have consistently warned ministers that the situation on the ground in our secure accommodation sector was not sustainable. The fact is, this statement just demonstrates that the Scottish Government have failed to competently implement their policy to date, despite these warnings. At the weekend, there was a story reported in the Sunday Post regarding a vulnerable Aberdeenshire teenager, Callie Thompson, who's been inappropriately placed in all 4 of Scotland's secure units since the age of 14. Callie, who has just turned 17, has now been discharged from the Rossi secured unit without a care package in place and directed to homelessness services. A 17-year-old now placed in homeless accommodation with people recently released from prison and people with substance abuse issues. Callie has said, "I feel like I've been abandoned and no one seems to care if I live or die." Deputy Presiding Officer, the destination on discharge from secure placements has not been mentioned in today's statement, but I'm deeply concerned at the picture emerging and believe this is the next big scandal to face this government and the failure of this government to meet the needs of some of the most vulnerable children and young people in our society. In 2024, 19% of children were discharged with other as the destination. What is clear from this statement today is secure accommodation capacity across our country remains completely unstable. So can I ask the Minister 2 questions? Will she personally intervene and investigate the failings in Callie Thompson's case today? And given the continuing pressure facing wider children and young people services, will the Minister review and now undertake a review in the inappropriate placement of young people in adult homelessness and adult mental health services?
Minister.
I thank Mr Briggs for the question, and I was very sorry to hear. I cannot comment on individual cases, but I was very sorry to hear about this story. All children placed in care settings, including secure accommodation, should expect to receive the highest standards of care, and that includes when they are leaving secure accommodation as well, because we have pathways for this. Of course, any decision to place a child in secure is one taken by, the relevant decision makers, including the independent courts, the children's hearings, the chief social work officers and secure accommodation providers. Mr Briggs asked me 2 questions. I am more than happy to look into the direct details of the case because I am very concerned about what I am hearing. And in relation to the wider issue around housing services, I'd be more than happy to discuss those issues directly with Mr Briggs after my statement.
Martin Whitfield.
I'm very grateful, Deputy Presiding Officer, and I too can thank the Minister for foresight of the statement. I think it's right to say, in the case that Miles Briggs has just raised, that the Scottish Government would remain the corporate parent for this individual up until, at the very least, the age of 18, so there is a direct responsibility. I would like to ask 2 questions. The evidence shows that currently we have 65 beds, and I welcome the fact that there's going to be an expansion in this, and that currently 54 beds are occupied. Can the Minister confirm how many of those beds are occupied by cross-border placements and how many beds are occupied by those young people who are on remand from the court system, given the fact that she's pointed out there are a number of ways that young people can end up in secure accommodation?
Minister.
Of course, I thank Mr Whitfield for that question, and I understand what he points out around the case that Mr Briggs referred to, and as I say, I've committed to directly looking into that. In relation to the secure care numbers, I can confirm that there are currently 6 children from England and Wales placed in Scotland on cross-border placements. In relation to the number of remand children, I would have to get back to Mr Whitfield with that, which I will do as following my statement.
Thank you. I now call Rona Mackay to be followed by Douglas Ross.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome the publication of the Government response to reimagining secure care. St Mary's Kenmure is in my constituency. It's an excellent facility, and I was pleased to hear the Minister's announcement on capacity there. Can I ask what steps the Minister intends to take to develop secure care provision in the longer term? How can stakeholders engage with that work? What are the strengths of the current system? And where does the Scottish Government envisage changes potentially being required in the future?
Minister.
So the Scottish Government is committed to building on the strengths of the system while embracing, a future vision for change which is in line with the priorities laid out in the promise. And I think this may involve radical change when and where improvements to children's experiences and outcomes demand that. Our response to the Reimagining Secure Care report will be delivered over 2 phases. So firstly, as I've set out in my statement, capacity, restoration and reinforcement, and then secondly, road testing elements of Reimagine Secure Care. So the next steps include exploring the report's recommendations in more detail with partners, establishing good practice examples and testing out some of those approaches. And as I confirmed in my statement, we are working with COSLA and Social Work Scotland on the development of a joint action plan that will allow us to progress on that work. I also confirmed our commitment to consult on the future of secure care by the end of this Parliament to ensure we get the views of those that matter.
Douglas Ross, to be followed by Jackie Dunbar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The Minister has hailed in her statement the establishment of another working group to deliver another action plan. Does she not accept that surely the Government should just get on with delivering a consistent capacity within secure accommodation that is so clearly needed?
Minister.
I would say that's exactly what I've done today. I've informed Parliament of the actions that have already been taken, the introduction of a new 4-bed house, a contingency plan, and today I've also introduced 2 new capacity restoration actions in relation to Kibble and Rossi. So I think I agree with Mr Ross that we need to go on with ensuring capacity. That's exactly what we're doing. I'm also focused on how we ensure that the system is fit for the future, and that's exactly what I have read out in my statement today.
Jackie Dunbar, to be followed by Pam Duncan-Glancy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It is vital that secure care is more than a holding centre, keeping communities safe and indeed young people safe from harming themselves. They need to help to break the potential progression into poorer life chances in adulthood through giving children and young people access to the same standard of education as their peers and have to have underlying health and well-being needs addressed. The system must be one where children are still treated as children, with their rights and well-being at the hearts of all decisions. How can we ensure this happens?
Minister.
I fully agree with the sentiments Ms Dunbar has put forward. We know that children or young people who do not get these chances will have poorer outcomes. And of course, secured accommodation is a specialised form of residential care designed to restrict the liberty of children who represent a significant risk to themselves or others. The primary aims of secure care are to keep children safe, to provide intensive support, therapeutic care and education, to help children importantly to help children re-engage with their communities, and to ensure that any deprivation of liberty is absolutely necessary, rights respecting and time limited. Secure providers work intensively to provide support which focuses on equal access to education, addressing health and wellbeing needs and creating a safe and nurturing environment. But of course I fully recognise the extremely complex and demanding nature of the work of secure care providers and local authority teams. They play a challenging but vital role in supporting children with significant and often multifaceted needs, and I'm sure all members agree with me and deeply value that dedication.
Pam Duncan-Glancy, to be followed by Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the Minister for advance sight of the statement. Presiding Officer, Social Work Scotland told the Education, Children and Young People Committee that the system is already depleted and struggling, with the social workforce effectively static over the last decade while duties keep rising. The Minister says the workforce are vital, and I wholeheartedly agree. And of course, we warned the Government on the passage of the Children Care and Justice Bill about the need to build the workforce first. So can I ask the Minister what specific actions are being taken to ensure the workforce is supported and the capacity is there to deliver the outcomes desired?
Minister.
Well, there are a number of actions that we have taken to improve retention, to improve support for the workforce, because the Scottish Government fully recognises the social work workforce is under, and with sector partners is delivering on specific priorities to ensure children and young people receive the level of care they deserve. It's absolutely vital, and I've said that in this chamber many times, and will only bring about systemic change to operational social work services by investing in those who provide these services. Our workforce. I've spoken before about the National Social Work Agency that we will establish by April 2026 to support registered social work students, registered social workers and social work assistants across the public, third and independent sectors. National and local government also recognise the need to work differently and to work more closely together. Therefore, National Social Work Agency COSLA and Social Work Scotland will work together as the Scottish Social Work Partnership. And as partners, they will share responsibility for a joint strategic plan to address the ongoing issues across the social work workforce in Scotland. So I just want to assure the member that I absolutely hear what she's saying, and these are active discussions that are ongoing in relation to what we can do to bolster the social work workforce.
Thank you. Audrey Nicholl, to be followed by Maggie Chapman.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm aware that some are suggesting that now that we're going to have a larger group of older young people with more serious offending resulting in them being detained in secure care, that we need to differentiate the approach in secure care on age grounds, but also to separate out welfare grounds from justice grounds. So this certainly concerns me. So would the Minister agree with me that this would be unhelpful and that the founding principles of our care for children based on needs as well as deeds still holds true?
Minister.
I would absolutely agree that this would be very unhelpful. Not only is there no evidence to support the separation of children, it would be unworkable in practice and it would run completely counter to the aspirations of the promise. Whilst for a small number of placements the reason for a child coming to be accommodated in a particular setting will be that they have committed an offence, things are often not as clear-cut as that, and the reason for a placement will usually be wrapped up in a number of wider considerations and broader welfare issues. Many of the children who have committed an offence will be victims themselves. So a rigorous matching process is in place which safeguards children in these circumstances, and when considering the referral of a child for admission to a secure care placement, the provider must carry out its own assessment of whether it can meet the needs of a child while also protecting the safety and the welfare of other children in that setting.
Maggie Chapman, to be followed by Willie Rennie.
Thank you. The Minister outlined investments to expand secure capacity, but can she detail parallel investments in community-based and preventative services designed to reduce the need for secure placements in the first place? And can she say more about how the joint action plan with COSLA will ensure local authorities are resourced to intervene earlier so secure accommodation is genuinely a last resort?
Minister.
Absolutely. The budget for 25-26 includes an additional £11 million in support for community justice services and ongoing work to further enable a shift away from the use of custody, bringing the total investment to £159 million. And this takes our total investment over 2 years to £25 million, supporting a range of community justice services, including diversion from prosecution, alternatives to remand and community sentencing. And this will really help us to ensure that justice social work can continue to provide alternatives to custody in the community where, of course, deemed appropriate.
Willie Rennie, to be followed by Jamie Hitler.
I do acknowledge the efforts of the Minister over the last year to resolve this problem, but this playing catch-up is typical of the Government's approach to keeping the promise. We've heard this morning the damning Audit Scotland report about the lack of planning from the Government over many years to deliver the promise, which means we're now behind schedule. And secondly, at committee this morning, the Education Committee, witnesses told us about the lack of engagement and, again, planning on the new promise bill. So is the Minister going to change the Government's approach to keeping the promise? Minister.
So I've been clear. I welcome the Audit Scotland report, and I'll take the time to consider its recommendations in full. I don't agree that it was damning. I do think there was some really positives in there. I think it was clear that we are still on track to deliver the promise by 2030. I think in terms of tracking progress, we've got the Promise Progress framework. We have Plan 2430. We have a number of ways where we are actively looking to track progress in the promise. But I think we need to be clear here as well. It's not all about measurable data. There are real people and real lives here, and I think we know that the promise is transformational change. I think that it's systemic change. It's not going to happen overnight. And while there are aspects absolutely that are measurable and that we will ensure to track, there are also, as I say, real lives at stake, and it's the change that is happening on the ground, which isn't always measurable, that I think is very important as well.
Jamie Hepburn, to be followed by Sue Webber.
Decisions around placing a child in secure care is currently undertaken locally, involving those who are working closely with that child, supporting that child and their family. In speaking to Reimagining Secure Care, the Minister spoke of the coordination of a national response to support the interests and needs of what is a small number of children and young people. Can she expand on that and set out what that might mean in practice?
Minister.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, looking ahead, the Government remains absolutely committed to developing a more resilient and a more responsive system of secure care provision, with a strong emphasis, of course, on capacity preservation and placement management. Scotland's secure care system does not currently have a placement commissioning mechanism or a national oversight of placement decisions. We're exploring a future approach to the national placement of children in secure, whereby this function would be held by the National Social Work Agency. And this would create a mechanism whereby children would be placed in secure through a centralised approach, assisting placing authorities with securing a placement and supporting better data collection. So consideration, of course, will still have to be given to resource, to remit, to functions and costs. But central coordination could certainly help to ensure that placement decisions are based on need, not geography or availability, promoting fairness and reducing regional disparities in access to secure care.
Sue Webber, to be followed by Fulton McGregor.
Thanks, Presiding Officer. The Minister has stated that we are laying the foundations for a more sustainable and resilient system for the future, following the challenges experienced earlier this year. And I welcome some of the announcements today. As convener of the Education Committee, I warned you of these very issues back in June 2023, 30 months ago. And our Care and Justice Stage 1 report was very clear. Capacity was a significant concern. Why did the Minister not heed these warnings 30 months ago and act then?
Minister.
Well, I think it's clear. I set out in my statement that the promise was clear that we want to ensure that we don't have overcapacity. Obviously, the situation that we were in last December and going on to some months after that was extremely difficult. But we've taken the necessary steps, we've taken the action. We are in a much better place now with 11 secure places today and a relatively a number around that range in the last couple of months. And I'm setting out now how we are planning to re-envision that for the future, to make it future-proof. So I take heed of Ms Webber's comments and thank her for bringing these matters to my attention.
And Fulton McGregor.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Does the Minister think it's right going forward for secure care to be provided by a series of independent organisations who all do things differently and are accountable to their boards, rather than to the Scottish Ministers?
Minister.
Well, as I've noted in my statements, while the immediate focus has been on stabilisation, capacity restoration and encouraging the safe use of alternatives, our efforts must always look forward, as I've said, future-proofing the system. We are considering future funding and commissioning models as part of our future plans under Reimagining Secure Care. We'll, of course, work in partnership with Scotland Excel, secure providers and commissioning authorities to consult on and to co-design a new national commissioning model that reflects our shared aspirations for the future of secure care. This process will consider potential changes in funding and commissioning arrangements to better serve the needs of Scotland's children.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes this item of business. There will be a brief pause before we move to the next item to allow front benches to change.